Hey, welcome to Breaking the News Plus on this Monday night. Well, we have come to this date we've been talking about for weeks. Today is the last day of the legislative session, maybe. They've got till 11:59 to get it all done. Danny Spiewak has been there day and night for weeks now, and we've been guessing a lot for the last several weeks. Would they make the deadline? So, Danny, what say you? They're going to make it tonight?
Well, to be honest, I think everybody here has kind of given up on the deadline. Last couple of days you thought, well, maybe we'll get done by Monday at 11:59 p.m. But the tone really has shifted today to we are going to miss our deadline, and now it's a question of when will the special session be called by the governor so we can get back to finish up the work. And not at all unexpected. It's typical in a year where it's a divided legislature. Of course, this year the Senate is held by the DFL by one vote, and the House is tied between the Democrats and Republicans. So it's not really a huge surprise, but now that we're here on the final day, they're just finishing up the bills that they can finish today, and then they're going to get ready for the special session.
Just for logistical purposes, Danny, does the governor have to wait until 12 on the dot to call the session, or what happens exactly at 11:59 and 12 o'clock?
That's a really good question. I don't know if he has to technically wait until midnight, but he did say, we just talked to him here this afternoon. He did a press availability, and he said they don't know when they're going to call it for. I think they have to wait. Yeah, they think they do have to wait till the real session's over, the regular one. But they don't know when he's going to issue the call because they still have some things to work out. They want to get everything kind of ironed out behind the scenes so that when they do come back for a special session, it will just be a matter of voting yes and just kind of, for lack of a better term, getting the paperwork done. But there are some negotiations that still need to happen between party leaders and the governor. And so that's why it's a little bit in flux right now. But I would imagine he probably has to wait until midnight to do that. I would imagine maybe hearing something tomorrow or the next couple days about when the timing will be.
So on this final day, Danny, I saw there was a little bit of some partisan mudslinging going around this afternoon. Aaron Murphy with the DFL said the House needs to get us some stuff to work on, and Speaker Demuth saying, hey, it's not us holding up this process. So what's the bickering about today? Are there specific bills that are really, making each side get on each other's nerves?
Well, it's really interesting because when we talked a couple of days ago, we thought that, there was that budget deal in place with the leadership, and then there was that, kind of disagreement within the DFL caucus over the undocumented issue. And of course, we covered that for a couple of days in terms of would that affect the budget? Will there be DFL members who don't like that compromise that takes undocumented immigrant adults off of state health care? But we haven't really heard anything much about that today. The disagreement, it seems more, at least from DFL Senate Majority Leader Aaron Murphy's side, she said that she was very angry at the House, and then she specifically called out House Republicans. She was claiming, and of course this is disputed depending on who you talk to, but she was claiming when the House would these budget bills that they were adding in new provision or coming up with new conversations and discussions on the House floor that she believed was a stall tactic, around things like paid family leave, where they're talking about agreements that had already been in place not to touch them. And she believes that the House Republicans were stalling in that regard. But when you talk to House Speaker Lisa Demuth from the GOP, she said that is not at all what was happening. She said that the deal that they struck with the leadership did leave some room open in what's known as conference committees. So when the House and Senate are merging their bills together, she believes this is really just how democracy works. Republicans bringing up issues and that they're working through it as fast as they can, but that the nature of the divided legislature is just the reason they're going to need extra time. So it's been hard to get, kind of the real answer because, of course, there has been that partisan bickering going on. But the one thing we do know is that they're just really nowhere close. I don't maybe want to say nowhere close, but they only have fewer than half of their budget bills finalized, to the governor. So they've got huge ones like education they've still got to work on. They've still got to get through health and human services. So we're talking about huge areas of the budget that have yet to be finalized here with the deadline coming up tonight.
When you talk to lawmakers in the hallway, I know what it's like at the Capitol in those last days and hours. Do people seem agitated, irritated, or do they seem still like both sides are open to working in a divided legislature to get this done for their employer, which is us, the people?
I think there is a little bit of frustration. And then I think there is also just sort of maybe kind of a realism around the fact that this has been a hard session. The beginning, of course, in the House was a start. The DFL walked out for 3 weeks in protest of the lack of the power sharing agreement. With that will take hours to explain that one if you're not familiar. The session began in kind of a rocky way. So I think that I think everybody expected it was going to be really hard in the end. Senate Majority Leader Aaron Murphy was probably the most fiery of any of the leaders today. So I think people expected this was a possibility. Now it's just a matter of, okay, how do we actually get the work done? And the question is, will it be a one-day special session like Governor Walz says? You get everything done behind the scenes and then you come back for one day, pass it, and you're done. Or Representative Hortman, the House DFL leader, who said that perhaps it would be 3 day special session. Those are all questions that we're still trying to get answers to.
And again, we can't remind our viewers enough, even if they go into a special session, and as you noted, is not altogether uncommon in a budget year, that doesn't mean our government shuts down. We have time before we get to that May Day moment.
Yeah, so by law, the legislature has to pass a budget basically by the end of June. July 1st would be the day the government would shut down if you didn't have a deal in place. But there's really no threat of that at this point. However, we did hear from Melissa Hortman, again, the House DFL leader. She said that she really wants to get this all done by June 1st, because if you don't have a budget passed and done and completely signed by June 1st, apparently layoff notices go out to state workers. Hey, in a month, the government could shut down. So even if they're not at a point where they would even have a shutdown, that June 1st date may be significant to not, kind of create that stress for folks.
Right, because that brings a whole host of other problems that we or the people that get those layoff notices would just have to trust that their government is going to get this done. And, with an economy that's just kind of rocky right now in terms of at least people's hearts and minds, you don't want to get to that step where you're involving real people with real jobs who have real bills to pay.
Yeah. And that's why I think it'll be really important to see just how far apart are the leaders right now on some of these final issues, because we thought the way in Minnesota it works is they all negotiate these broader budget targets. And then that, in a perfect world, like they did that last Thursday and announced it, you think that over the next several days that it's just a matter of putting the bills on the table and passing them. But for whatever reason, it's just there's still these outstanding issues that they're still working through in certain bills, and that's what seems to be causing a little bit of the delay right now. And so like we've talked about, a special session in divided legislature, it's just kind of the way it works, and they should be able to finish it within the next couple of weeks. But there's just some of those, just a little bit of lingering uncertainty that I think is unsettling for people.
And a lot of lawmakers, at least the ones that have been there for longer than a year or two, know that there has to be compromise. I was reading today that the light rail project, for example, the train project that would have gone from the cities to Duluth, that looks like it's taken a back seat if the Democrats want to hang on to that funding that they're giving, like teachers and school workers to get paid, to get like vacation pay over the summer. They had to give up the train to get the pay. It's going to be those kinds of compromises, right, from both parties.
Yeah, you can't always get everything you want. And that's a really good example of that, because for a long time, the education bill in the House was stuck for a couple of weeks, actually, because the Republicans did not want to be giving out these unemployment benefits to hourly school workers over the summer. They just said the state didn't have enough money to pay for that. Right. So that was a real problem there in the education budget bill, which is a big bill. I believe that's the largest area of the budget. But they did come to that compromise, at least in the House version, where the House agreed that, okay, we won't do the funding for the train from the Twin Cities to Duluth, known as the Northern Lights Express, but then we will be able to fund the unemployment. So a good example kind of the way state government works, where you got to give up one priority. That train, and we went up to Duluth a couple of years ago to do a story about that. It was something that Republicans felt was not a priority, that people wouldn't use enough to justify the cost. And so they may revisit that at some point, but it is something that the Democrats had to give up.
Now, you mentioned the governor had been speaking to the press in the last hour, and obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, he's not involved in these legislative conversations at this end game stage. It kind of comes in at the end. Did he just come out to strike an optimistic tone, or did you learn anything from hearing from Governor Walz?
It sounds like he is involved to the extent that he is, kind of part of the negotiating table with the different Senate, House, and then he's there for his voice for his administration because he has veto power. And so
Yeah.
I think in that regard, although he may not be doing the nitty gritty of this bill in terms of kind of their internal chamber disagreements, I think he's there as this is our side of things and part of any deal that they strike. That's what they did with the global ones, and so I think he's in there too. So he obviously aligns with the Senate DFL and with the tied House DFL side of things, but he's also has his own voice as the administrator, kind of the administration, I should say, and the executive branch in the state. So he does come from a little bit of a different perspective, although surely he'll align more with his own party.
Sure. And to note for folks watching this, the governor has been saying for at least the last couple of months that he wasn't going to make any sort of announcement about what he plans to do in the future until this legislative session is over. So it's still an open question. Is Governor Walz going to run for a third term? Is he going to hang it up and seek a different office? His future, we don't get to know until lawmakers kind of come to a deal, right?
Right. Yeah, that's another kind of impact of the special session that I don't know when he was going to plan to make that announcement, but right, if this drags June, then he's occupied, and you may not know. It could cause a little bit of a delay in him announcing his political future.
Right. Yeah. Well, it always is better for the sitting governor to have a budget passed in regular session if you can. So he does have, I would guess, a political vested interest in this getting done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and people at home, I don't know if people at home are following the ins and outs of every single day of the legislature, but I think people want to know that the elected officials that they elected, regardless of party, are able to get something done. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about a budget that funds law enforcement across the state. It funds, everything from, there's the environment bill, your K through 12 schools, judiciary, the courts, it funds just kind of your everyday things. And so I think that, I think people just want to see them be able to work together, get a budget in place, even if it's not perfect for either side.
Right.
It's something that the state can work with.
Right. I think, to put it in a term the kids use, Danny, the people of Minnesota want receipts. They want to know what they got.
Yeah, that's right. They want the receipts. They want to know that the lawmakers are doing the work.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will continue to check back in with you for as long as it takes, Danny Spiewak, for as long as it takes.
Sounds good.
All right.
We'll see how it
joining us.
goes. Maybe it'll be a quick one. Maybe it'll be done this week.
All right. Well, enjoy your night in that basement room that you're in. We appreciate your coverage for us on
At least
the
there's
Plus.
a window in this one. Yeah.
Thank you,
Sounds
sir.
good. See you
so
later,
much.
Janet. Thanks.
All right. That's it for Breaking the News Plus on this Monday, final day at our state legislature. We'll see you next time.